The lukewarm coffee tasted like ash in my mouth. On my laptop screen, the grainy black and white image from the living room camera showed movement. Her movement. Chloe. My Chloe. Or at least, the woman it believed was mine for the past 3 years. She wasn't alone. My knuckles were white where they gripped the cheap plastic edge of the desk in my tiny, rented studio apartment. Rain lashed against the single grimy window, mimicking the storm raging inside my chest. On screen, Chloe laughed, tossing her long, honey brown hair, the hair I loved running my fingers through, the hair that now fell onto the shoulder of another man, Mark, her coworker, the supposedly harmless guy she insisted was just a friend whenever a flicker of unease crossed my face, the same unease that now felt like a prophecy, fulfilled in the coldest, most brutal HD possible. He leaned in, saying something I couldn't hear through the silent feed. She tilted her head. That familiar, flirtatious smile playing on her lips, a smile I'd thought was reserved for me. Then, his hand, large and possessive, slid from her shoulder down her arm. She didn't pull away. She moved closer. My breath hitched, a jagged shard of glass in my throat. This wasn't some ambiguous gesture. This was the slow, deliberate choreography of betrayal. The laptop screen blurred, not from tears, not yet. From a white-hot fury so intense it vibrated through my bones. Fury, and beneath it, a crushing wave of vindication that tasted even more bitter than the coffee. Because this horrifying scene unfolding in real time on the screen, it installed myself, was exactly why I'd put the cameras in. Not paranoia. A test. My test. And Chloe, my beautiful, ambitious Chloe, who dreamed of designer labels and penthouse views while living paycheck to paycheck with her struggling bartender boyfriend, was failing spectacularly. 3 years. 3 years of shared ramen noodles, of arguing over whose turn it was to put coins in the laundromat dryer, of celebrating promotions at her marketing firm with cheap champagne, while I poured beers for strangers until 3 a.m. 3 years of her sighing wistfully over Instagram influencers on yachts, her eyes sometimes holding a flicker of disappointment, resentment. When she looked at me, my worn jeans and faded band t-shirts, I saw it. I always saw it. I just chose, for a long time, to believe it was about the circumstances, not about me. But the seed of doubt had been planted long before Mark. It was planted the day I inherited it all. My Uncle Silas wasn't warm. He was shrewd, calculating, and built his fortune in commercial real estate with the ruthlessness of a chess grandmother playing for blood. We weren't close. A birthday card with a crisp 100 tucked inside was about the extent of our relationship. His sudden death from a heart attack hit like a physical blow, not from grief, but from sheer disbelief. The letter from his lawyer arrived a week later. Dear Alex, it began, devoid of sentiment. By the time you read this, I'll be beyond caring about your reaction. My estate, valued at approximately $87 million after taxes and settlements, is yours. Conditionally. Conditionally. The word echoed in the silent, suddenly cavernous feeling of my crappy apartment. The condition was simple, brutal, and quintessentially Silas. I couldn't touch a dime of the principal, or reveal my true financial status. For 3 years, I had to continue living exactly as I was. Bartender wages, frugal existence, no sudden windfalls. At the end of those 3 years, if I hadn't blown it on stupidity or gotten myself killed, the entire fortune, locked in trusts and investments managed by his ruthless firm, would be irrevocably mine. It was a test of character, Silas style. Could I handle obscene wealth without it corrupting me before I even had it? Could I navigate life without the crutch of money? The initial shock gave way to a giddy, terrifying euphoria. $87 million. It was an abstract number, too large to truly comprehend. Then came the paranoia. Who could I trust? Suddenly, every interaction felt loaded, especially with Chloe. I loved her. God, I loved her fiercely in those early days. She was vibrant, funny, sharp as a tack, and when she looked at me with those big, hazel eyes, I felt like the king of my very modest world. But the money Silas warning echoed. Wealth attracts parasites, Alex, like flies to honey. Test them. Test everyone. especially the ones closest to your heart. I dismissed it at first. Chloe wasn't like that. She loved me. Alex the bartender. Not some hypothetical millionaire, but the seed Silas planted found fertile ground in the quiet moments. The way her smile sometimes didn't quite reach her eyes when I showed her the budget spreadsheet. The subtle comparisons she'd make about her friends' boyfriends who were doing so well. The increasing frequency of girls' nights that stretched later and later, often with Mark conveniently mentioned. The cameras were a line I never thought I'd cross. It felt slimy, invasive, the antithesis of trust. But Silas' voice in my head, cold and pragmatic, argued, trust is a luxury afforded by certainty. You have none. Verify. So, under the guise of wanting extra security for the apartment, while I worked late shifts, a plausible concern in our neighborhood, I installed two small, discreet cameras, one covering the front door and living room area, one in the bedroom. A knot of guilt tightened in my stomach every time I thought about them. But the doubt, fueled by Chloe's growing restlessness and Mark's constant presence, was stronger. The first few weeks yielded nothing, just Chloe watching TV, scrolling through her phone, doing yoga in the living room, mundane, reassuring. Then came the night. She said she was working late on a big pitch. The camera showed her coming home at 8 p.m. with Mark. They ordered pizza, laughed, watched a movie. He left at 11:30 p.m. Innocent, probably, but the intimacy of it, the ease with which he occupied our space, sat like a stone in my gut. I confronted her gently the next day. Hey, saw Mark came over last night. Everything okay with the pitch? Her eyes widened slightly. A fraction too much. Oh, yeah, the pitch, it got pushed. We just needed to brainstorm some last-minute ideas. Ended up grabbing pizza here. Hope you don't mind. It was easier than staying at the office. She flashed a quick smile, reaching out to squeeze my hand. You know Mark, he's harmless. Just a work buddy. Harmless. The word echoed now as I watched his hands slide around her waist on the screen, pulling her against him. She melted into him. My vision tunneled. The cheap coffee mug slipped from my numb fingers, shattering on the linoleum floor. Brown liquid splattered like blood against the warm beige. I didn't move. Couldn't move. I was frozen, a spectator in my own personal hell. On screen, their faces were close. Too close. He murmured something. She laughed again. That throaty, inviting laugh I knew so well. Then, slowly, deliberately, he kissed her. Not a peck. A deep, lingering kiss. And Chloe kissed him back. Her hands came up, not to push him away, but to tangle in his hair, the same way she tangled hers in mine. A sound escaped me. A raw, guttural groan that ripped through the silence of the apartment, louder than the rain. It was the sound of something precious and irreplaceable shattering into a million jagged pieces. 3 years. Shared dreams whispered in the dark. Plans for a future that always felt just out of reach. The countless times it swallowed my pride, my secret, telling myself it was worth it, because she was worth it. That when the 3 years were up, it'd sweep her off her feet, shower her with everything she ever wanted, and her loyalty through the lean times would be our foundation. A beautiful lie? I watched, paralyzed, as the kiss deepened. His hands roamed her back, dipped lower. Her slid under his shirt. They broke apart, breathing heavily, foreheads touching. Chloe looked up at him, her eyes wide, dark with desire. Not the look of someone caught off guard. The look of someone who wanted this, who had chosen this. Mark glanced towards the bedroom door. Chloe followed his gaze. She bit her lip, a gesture I used to find adorable. Now it looked like a prelude to surrender. She nodded, a small, almost imperceptible movement. Then, hand in hand, they walked out of the living room camera's view, towards the bedroom, towards the second camera. I didn't need to switch feeds. I knew. The image was burned onto my retinas, seared into my brain. The deliberate walk, the shared intent, the utter betrayal unfolding in the sanctuary of our bed. A wave of nausea rolled over me, so intense I doubled over, gasping for air that wouldn't come. The tiny apartment, once a symbol of our shared struggle, now felt like a suffocating prison of my own making. The walls, plastered with concert posters and thrift store art, seemed to close in, mocking me. The lingering scent of her vanilla perfume, usually a comfort, now choked me with its sickening sweetness. The fury returned, a blinding, red tide washing away the nausea. It wasn't just the act, it was the method, the calculated lies, the gaslighting when I expressed unease about Mark. "You're being paranoid, Alex. Jealousy isn't a good look." The way she'd snuggle into me later, whispering promises that now tasted like poison. Had she compared us, me, pouring drinks, smelling of stale beer and sweat, coming home exhausted, counting pennies, Mark, with his crisp suits, company car, tales of business lunches and expense accounts. Was the disparity that glaring, that tempting? I thought hiding my wealth was protecting us, testing the purity of her love. Instead, it had created the vacuum Mark so easily filled. It'd given her a struggling boyfriend, and wondered why she looked elsewhere for security. The irony was a knife twisting in my gut. Silas' test was supposed to reveal loyalty. It revealed a truth far uglier. That the life I offered, the real me she knew, wasn't enough. Not for her. Not anymore. I finally moved, not towards the laptop to witness the final, devastating act in the bedroom. I couldn't. That image would break something irreparable. Instead, I surged to my feet, the chair screeching violently behind me. My fist slammed into the flimsy dry wall beside the window. Plaster dust rained down, mingling with the coffee stain on the floor. The pain in my knuckles was sharp, immediate, a welcome counterpoint to the soul-deep agony tearing me apart. I paced the tiny space, a caged animal. 3 years of suppressed identity, of biting my tongue when she dreamed aloud about Paris or Santorini, of pretending a bonus at the bar was a major windfall, all crashed down. The weight of the secret, combined with the crushing weight of her betrayal, was unbearable. I wasn't Alex the bartender. I wasn't Alex the secret millionaire. I was Alex the fool. The man who gambled his heart on a loyalty test and lost everything. The rational part of my brain, the part that sounded disturbingly like Uncle Silas, cut through the emotional maelstrom. This is the data point you needed. Painful, but conclusive. She failed. Miserably. Now, act. What did that mean? Storm in. Catch them in flagrante delicto. Scream. Cry. Throw Mark out the window. The image held a savage appeal, but it was messy, undignified. Silas wouldn't approve. Never let them see you bleed, Alex. Especially not the ones who cut you. No. This required coldness, precision, the kind Silas employed in his business dealings. Chloe had made her choice. She'd chosen Mark in our apartment, in our bed, while believing me to be broke and oblivious. Fine. Let her have him. But she wouldn't get the satisfaction of my devastation. Not yet. And she certainly wouldn't get the life she truly craved. Not with me. I looked at the time on my shattered phone screen. 10:47 p.m. My shift ended at 2 a.m. But he'd called in sick hours ago. Annoying suspicion keeping me home, glued to the laptop. A suspicion horrifically confirmed. They'd been here for over an hour already. How much longer? The thought was another lash. I forced myself to breathe, deep, ragged gulps of the damp air. I needed to be gone before they emerged. I couldn't face them. Not like this. Raw and bleeding. I needed armor. I needed the persona Silas inheritance demanded. Cool, detached, in control, moving on autopilot, fueled by a strange, icy calm settling over the initial inferno. I grabbed the small duffel bag I kept packed for rare overnight fishing trips. I threw in essentials, toiletries, a couple of changes of clothes, my passport, a relic from a college trip he'd lied about affording, and the small, fireproof lockbox containing the only tangible proof of my hidden life, the legal documents from Silas' lawyer, the keys to a secure safety deposit box downtown holding another set, and a single, unassuming black credit card linked to an account with a limit that would make Mark's corporate Amex weep. It was my emergency lifeline, untouched until now. I spared one last glance at the laptop. The living room feed was empty. The bedroom feed I couldn't. I snapped the laptop shut. The sound final. The evidence was saved. That was enough. For now. Quietly, methodically, I erased any trace of my abrupt departure being unusual. I left a note on the counter, scrawled in my usual messy handwriting. Got called in for a double emergency staff shortage. Don't wait up. Love you. The love you felt like ash on my tongue. A final, bitter lie in a relationship built on them. I pocketed the spare key she had, leaving only mine on the rink. I slipped out the front door into the rain-slick night, pulling my hoodie up. The cold air hit my face like a slap, sharp and cleansing. I didn't look back at the apartment building. I walked, head down, hands shoved deep in my pockets, the duffel bag bumping against my leg. I walked away from 3 years of shared history, shared poverty, and shared deception. I walked away from Chloe. But I wasn't walking towards nothing. I was walking towards the future Silas had handed me. A future Chloe had just irrevocably forfeited. The fury still simmered, a low burn beneath the icy surface. The pain was a physical ache in my chest, but overriding it all was a grim, terrifying certainty. The test was over. Chloe had failed. Now, it was time to collect the results and deliver the consequences. The 3-year clock wasn't just up on Silas' condition. It was up on Alex the bartender, the man she thought she knew, the man she betrayed. He was gone. The man walking away in the rain. He was someone else entirely. And he had 87 million reasons to make sure Chloe understood exactly what she'd lost. Not just a boyfriend, a life beyond her wildest, most expensive dreams. The thought wasn't comforting. It was simply inevitable. The rain intensified, soaking through my hoodie, plastering my hair to my forehead. I hailed a cab, something I never did, sighting cost. Tonight, cost was irrelevant. Where to? The driver asked, his voice bored. I gave the address of the only place that made sense right now. Not my apartment, not anywhere Chloe could find me. The Excelsior Grand, downtown. The driver raised an eyebrow slightly, but just nodded, pulling away from the curb. The grimy streets of my neighborhood blurred past the rain-streaked window, replaced by brighter lights, cleaner sidewalks, towering buildings. A different world. My world. Or at least, the world I could finally inhabit. I leaned my head back against the cool leather seat, closing my eyes. The images from the camera feed played on a loop behind my eyelids. The kiss, the walk to the bedroom, the knowing look in her eyes. Each repetition was a fresh wound. But alongside the pain, a plan began to form. Cold, calculated. Silas would approve. Confrontation wasn't the answer. Not immediately. Let her wonder. Let her spin her lies. Let her think her secret was safe. The power wasn't in catching her. It was in letting her believe she'd gotten away with it. Right up until the moment I pulled the rug out from under her entire reality. The moment she learned exactly who she'd betrayed. And exactly what that betrayal had cost her. The cab pulled up under the gleaming awning of the Excelsior Grand. A doorman in a pristine uniform rushed forward with an umbrella. I paid the driver with a 20, telling him to keep the change, a gesture that felt alien yet powerful. Stepping out onto the marble steps, the sheer opulence of the place was staggering. Crystal chandeliers, deep carpets, the hushed murmur of wealth. I looked down at my soaked hoodie, worn jeans, and scuffed sneakers. I looked utterly, completely out of place. The doorman's expression remained professionally neutral, but I saw the flicker of assessment. "Good evening, sir." Checking in. I met his gaze directly. Yes, reservation under Thorne. Alexander Thorne. Using Silas' surname felt like donning armor. My inheritance alias, established by the lawyers for situations exactly like this. He checked his tablet. A moment of surprise, quickly masked. "Ah, yes, Mr. Thorne. The Royal Penthouse Suite. Welcome back, sir." He gestured smoothly to a concierge, who materialized silently. "Pierre will escort you." The Royal Penthouse Suite. Silas' lawyers had booked it months ago for my coming out weekend, scheduled for next month after the 3-year mark. It planned to surprise Chloe here. A bitter laugh threatened to bubble up. Instead, I was surprising myself. Pierre, impeccably dressed and radiating discreet efficiency, led me through the opulent lobby. Heads turned subtly. My disheveled appearance against the backdrop of extreme luxury was a dissonant spectacle. I didn't care. Let them stare. I felt detached, floating above the scene. The plush elevator whisked us soundlessly upwards. The doors opened directly into a private foyer. The suite wasn't a room, it was an apartment. A breathtaking, panoramic view of the rain-lashed city glittered beyond floor-to-ceiling windows. Marble floors, exquisite furniture, a grand piano gleaming in the corner. It smelled of money, leather, and expensive flowers. Pierre gave a brief tour, his voice a respectful murmur, then discreetly vanished. Alone, utterly alone in a palace. The silence was deafening. I walked to the window, pressing my forehead against the cool glass. The city lights blurred through the rain and the unshed tears I refused to let fall. Below, the life I knew was tiny, insignificant. Chloe, Mark, the apartment, the bar, they belonged to a different planet. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out. A text from Chloe, sent 5 minutes ago. Hey babe, just got home. Long night. You still at the bar? Miss you. Hope the double isn't too brutal. Text me when you can. Love you lots. Zoxo, the casualness of it. The brazen lie. Just got home. While I stood here, miles away, the image of her in Mark's arms seared into my brain. The miss you. Love you lots. The sheer, breathtaking audacity. It wasn't just betrayal, it was insult added to injury. She thought I was clueless, sweating behind a bar, oblivious. The fury surged back, white hot and cleansing. My fingers tightened on the phone. I wanted to hurl it through the window. I wanted to call her, scream every vile, heartbroken word. I wanted to drive back, kick down the door, but Silas' voice, colder than the window pane, cut through the impulse. Emotion is weakness, leverage is power. Shed handed me devastating leverage, on a silver platter, recorded in HD. I didn't reply to her text. Let her wonder, let her anxiety grow. The silence would be its own punishment. I walked away from the window, stripping off my wet clothes and leaving them in a damp heap on the pristine marble floor. I headed for the master bathroom, a spa-like haven of marble and chrome. I turned the shower on as hot as I could stand it, stepping under the scalding spray, letting it pound against my skin, trying to wash away the feeling of contamination, the phantom touch of her betrayal. The water mixed with the tears I finally allowed to fall, silent and furious. Later, wrapped in a thick, monogrammed robe, I sat at the sleek desk in the suite study. I opened my laptop. With clinical detachment, I accessed the cloud storage for the security cameras. I isolated the crucial footage, Mark's arrival, the kiss, the walk to the bedroom. I saved multiple copies cloud, encrypted drive, the lawyer's secure server, evidence, cold, hard, undeniable. Then, I opened a new document, not a rant, not an emotional letter, a plan, a blueprint for the endgame. Phase 1, disengage and observe, maintain radio silence. Let Chloe's initial relief at thinking she got away with it curdle into confusion. Then anxiety. Monitor her communications if possible and her email password, a relic of helping her set up her laptop. Watch her social media. See how she spins my sudden work commitment. See if Mark gets bolder. Phase 2, secure assets and identity. Meet with Silas lawyers first thing tomorrow. Formally end the 3-year probation period. Gain full control of the trusts. Update all financial access. Establish Alexander Thorne publicly. Secure new residences. This penthouse was temporary. Sever all financial ties to the old life. Close the shared bank accounts, minimal as it was. Cancel the joint phone plan. Become untraceable to Alex the bartender. Phase 3, the revelation. This required finesse. Not a screaming match. Not a public humiliation yet. Something surgical. Something that would make her understand the magnitude of her mistake the most devastatingly personal way. The footage was the weapon, but its deployment needed timing. It needed context. It needed her to be comfortable, maybe even hopeful, right before the floor vanished. Phase 4, erasure. Remove her completely from my life. Legally, financially, physically. Ensure she received nothing she might feel entitled to. The life she glimpsed with Mark, it would be a pale shadow of the life she threw away. And she would know it. I typed until my eyes burned. The plan was ruthless, detailed, fueled by a cold rage that felt more sustainable than the initial, soul-crushing grief. It was the rage of being played for a fool, the rage of wasted years, the rage of loving someone who saw you as insufficient, as a stepping stone. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Chloe. "Alex, you okay? Text me back when you get a sec. Getting a little worried." Worried. Or worried her carefully constructed lie was fraying. I pictured her in our apartment, maybe curled on the couch Mark had just been sitting on, maybe still smelling like him. Was she nervous, guilty, or just annoyed I wasn't responding to her performance? I picked up the phone. My thumb hovered over the screen. The urge to type something devastating was almost overwhelming. "I know," or "How was Mark?" or simply, "Go to hell." Instead, I typed 3 words, calm, flat, utterly devoid of the tempest inside me. "Busy, talk later." I hit send. The disconnect was jarring, from the man who would have texted back paragraphs of affection, reassurance, maybe even apologized for her worrying to this. 2 words. A dismissal. I put the phone on silent, face down on the desk. I poured myself a glass of expensive scotch from the well-stocked bar, the amber liquid catching the city lights. I didn't sip it immediately. I just held the heavy crystal glass, feeling its cold solidity. The storm outside was easing. The relentless downpour had softened to a steady drizzle. Inside the penthouse, surrounded by unimaginable luxury, I felt profoundly empty. The man Chloe betrayed was gone. The millionaire sitting here was a stranger, forged in the fire of her infidelity. The test was over. She failed. Now, the real game began. And Alexander Thorne played to win. The cost of entry, Chloe's future, her happiness, her understanding of everything she thought she knew. I finally took a sip of the scotch. It burned going down, a harsh, welcome heat. It tasted like revenge, and it was only the first sip.